Okay, good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Bava Metzia. We're learning Kuf Aleph Amud Beis and Kuf Beis Amud Aleph. As you can see, this first Amud is pretty thick. And then the next blot that we'll catch up tomorrow in Yirtzeh Hashem Sundays are very hard for me to catch up. We should be able to catch up by Monday. Is today Sunday? By Monday. And Tuesday night's Yontif?
Yes.
Oh, so that's good. So we'll do a blot Tuesday and a blot Wednesday and a blot Thursday. No problem. Piece of cake. Okay, great. By piece of cake, I mean not a piece of cake. All right. So we're starting at the open of the Gemara. And really our Mishnah on the top of Kuf Aleph and Beis had a little bit of a quirk, which is that if I'm renting a house to someone and it's bimosag shamim, it's been in the winter months, I'm not allowed to evict them between Sukkot and Pesach. But in the summer, 30 days notice is considered an acceptable amount of time to evict someone. So the Gemara picks up with this Nakuda. What is the rationale why we're not allowed to evict someone during the Mosag Shamim? It's actually quite sensitive. When a person rents a house for the sake of the winter months, obviously you don't want to have to move out in the middle of a polar vortex. Similarly, says the Gemara, but if that's true, why don't we have the same rationale by the summer months? The mindset of the guys, you don't, again, unless it's a short-term rental, you don't buy a house to leave, you buy a house to stay. So like, if I'm the owner, or I should say rent, if you're renting my house, I cannot kick you out from Sukkot to Pesach. But in the summer, 30 days notice is fine. So why is that? The reason why we make a distinction, even though you're right, the mindset of the renter is for that whole tkufa, but there's a difference between Yimosag Shamim and Yimosag Chama. There are no homes. The market is considered dry at that point. In their times, nobody moved in the winter because it was such a headache. I think everyone would agree that that's true now. We just don't always have a choice. So we do it when we have to do it, and the moving trucks and the whatever. So, in our cases, in our scenarios, where our supply and demand is different. But by them, the winter was considered a dead time. So says the Gemara, well, okay, but that causes a problem later in our Mishnah, Ema Seifa. On the second of the wide lines at the end of the line, Bekrachim, we had said in our Mishnah that in larger cities, we had said that 12 months is the eviction line when it comes to Krachim, to big cities. But that poses a problem because we said that b'mosag shamim, you cannot evict someone between Sukkot and Pesach. But, says the Gemara, v'ilu malu le yimei schirs b'mosag shamim mapikle. It's implied from our Mishnah that in the Krachim, if 12 months is your threshold, then let's say the 12 month falls out in the dead of the winter. It's implied that it's allowed to end in the Krachim. V'amai halo shliach beis megar. We shouldn't have these two different dinim in our Mishnah are conflicting. We shouldn't have a case scenario where anyone is ever evicted during the winter months. Yet that seems to be the case in the Krachim. So the Gemara says, you're right. You're absolutely right. Amar Yehuda lehodiak tani. We're talking about letting someone know that we want to evict them. Okay, we still don't know what this means. And this is what is meant. Hamasker bais lechavero stam. If a person rents his house to a friend and he does so with no terms and conditions, so then you're not allowed to remove them during the winter months. And look at this. So when is Sukkot? It's on the 15th of Tishrei. So you have to let someone know by the 15th of Elul, in order to then say, look, I'm giving you 30 days while it's still summer months. There's still homes for you to purchase. But come the day after Sukkot, you're gone. So that's mutter. As long as you have enough warning, which is a 30-day warning prior to Sukkot, that's considered a reasonable lead up to an eviction. It gives them enough time, and let's just talk in supply and demand language, there's still supply in the month of Elul. So therefore, as long as you're 30 days, you're good to go. And Tanya Nami Hachi, we have a brisa that supports this, a third of the way down on Kuf Aleph on the base. Both when we said Shloshim by Yemos HaChama, and when we said Shnei Masar Chodesh when we're talking about Krachim, Lo Amru Elo Lehodio. Both of those zmanim were only for the eviction notice of a minimum of 30 days, or in regards to the krachim, 12 months. So we already have our raya. Everything is kaftor v'ferach in regards to our Mishnah. We understand what we're saying. Yes, you're right in general. During a Mosag Shamim, you're not allowed to let people go. But under normal circumstances, if I'm renting you my home, as long as I give you a 30-day notice before the 15th of Elul, you have 30 days to get out before the 15th of Tishrei, you're good to go. And then even during Mosag Shamim, they can leave. And by krachim, you have to give a 12-month warning. Okay, fine. So we have what we need. But the Brisa still continues to talk. Just like the person who rents the Airbnb or the house, whatever, and that could be me. Let's say I'm the owner and I'm renting to you. Just like I am tzarech lehodia, that I have to let you know. The same thing is true in the reverse. Kach tzocher tzarech lehodia. If you need to leave as the renter, you are also required to inform me of that with ample time, because otherwise you're making me lose parnasa, and that's not acceptable. And says the Gemara, the maskir can say to the socher, had you told me, I would have gotten another renter. You can't just walk out with no notice. It's unacceptable. So seemingly, what's implied from the Brisa, at least, is if it's all connected the way that it seems, is that you have to give the same 30-day notice. You have to give the same notice that you plan on leaving. Okay, next. Amar Rav Asi, im nichnas yom echad b'mosag shamim. If this is a difficult Gemara to understand on its face, and we'll clarify it in the next two lines, that if you are nichnas yom echad b'mosag shamim, if you go into the winter months by even one day, eno yachol lahotzio min hachag ad Pesach, then you can't ask someone to leave from Sukkot to Pesach. Says the Gemara, what do you mean one day? Ve'anan shloshim yom kamar. What is your one day of nichnas? What does that mean? Says the Gemara, you're right. This language is very confusing. I agree. And here's what the Gemara says. Hachi kamar. Im nichnas yom echad b'mosag shamim mei hani shloshim yom, then eno yachol lehotzio min hachag ve'ad Pesach. So the Gemara says that the din of Rav Asi is like this. When we say that you need a 30-day run-up to Tesvav of Tishrei, to Sukkot, it means it can't be 29. If it's 29 and the 30th day is nichnas into the winter months, so then you're not allowed to let him go until after Pesach. You're not allowed to evict him until after Pesach. So a very strict din, a hard line rule, that if you want to evict someone and you are the renter and they are the one renting, if you want to evict them during the winter months, you must have a minimum of 30 days notice. Not 29, not 28, not I showed up 5 minutes late, nothing, just what it is. A colleague of mine told me that his wife's job is like incredibly makbid. You have to be in your desk at work by 7 a.m. every single day. Don't care what's going on in your life. 7 a.m. Yeah. And they're makbid gomer. They like work for the city, whatever it is. It's not here, it's another city, but they're very, very makbid. So the Gemara over here is also very makbid, and it's actually a beautiful hakpada, which is that you need to be responsible to some degree for the person that you're interacting with and their parnasa. You can't negatively impact. So, okay, now we have different policies. Maybe it's 2 weeks. No, okay, we have different rules, different standards, but that's what the Gemara says. And then halfway down, Amar Rav Huna v'imba l'rabos b'dameha marbe. Such an odd din. Rav Huna says if the maskir wants to increase rent, he's allowed. So says the Gemara, a very graphic line. Amar le Rav Nachman, Hi lenakte bekobse de l'shabke leglima. This is not dissimilar to taking the kovse, which is the scrotum, it's what holds the beitzim, to l'shabke leglima, and then forcing them to give over the coat, which is all of this is derech mashal, which means you're basically forcing them out of the building. You have a rent control. You've been paying $250 a month for 57 years, and then they're like, yeah. Okay, now it's $2,257 a month. So that's ridiculous. So says the Gemara, no, it's not just whatever you want. It's not crazy random. Lo tzricha to aikura bate, when houses in general, when the market goes up. So when the market goes up, you are allowed to add the rent that is normal and normative to whatever the standard is. Someone on my block sold their house for $1 million. I'm like, Baruch Hashem, you change the market.
Less 40,000.
Less 40,000. That's not the point. That's not the point. But it changes the market, right? And because of that, what ends up happening is that it makes it a standard. So let's say my house was a rental house, Within this din, I could raise the rent up to the standard of society, whatever that is. Again, how do you define society? Is it a block? Is it a community? Is it a zip code? Fine. So says the Gemara. Let's get into some different iterations here. Pshita, nafale besa. Let's say that I'm the maskir, and God forbid the house falls down. My house falls down. I have nowhere to live, and you're in my other house. So Amar le, I can say to you, lo adifas minoi. There's no reason why you should have my house over me. I'm kicking you out. I shouldn't be stuck going to find a house. I've rented you my house. So the Gemara says, fascinatingly, they're not even. They're not the same. It's my house, Lamaisa. So I have a little bit of an upper hand. We're both on the street. We're both on the street, but it's my house. I'm allowed to kick you out. So these things have to go into the terms and conditions. Let's say, however, the maskir was Zavne. He sold the house that you're living in, or it was given as a Yerusha, or Yave b'matana, or the house that you're living in, the maskir gave over as a matana. Omar le, the socher who's renting says, it's great that you gave it to another person, but I don't really care. Lo adifas mi gavra de asis mine. You, the new owner, you're no different than the original guy, and I don't have to go anywhere, and that's 100% correct. You can't just give away the place that I'm renting. We have terms and conditions. You want to get rid of me 30 days before Chag, no problem. We can talk about it, but not out of the blue. What about klala libre? What if a father wanted to make a wedding for his son, and he wanted to give over that house? So chazina, you have an efshar le'odu if the maskir was able to give proper warning to let the socher know that he has to leave, that he needs to let him go. But sometimes it doesn't work like that. Sometimes you meet a girl, or the father finds the perfect shidduch, and they're getting married on Tuesday. And this is we're not talking about in our world where we wait a couple of months. This is in their world. Oh, yeah, good. All right. Harad mekudesh esli b'tavasa kudas Moshe b'Yisrael, and then they get married right away. So Zan be'ilo, if there really was no choice, and this is a very important halacha, because that means if the maskir's arm is twisted high up on his back and he really doesn't have a choice, then Amar le lo adifas minod. It's the same din as before, where my house falls down, so then you got to be on the street, not me. In the Maseches, it's still in my house. I have the upper hand. Same thing is true for scenarios that are out of my control. Very good. There was a man who bought a boatload. That's not in the slang sense. He bought a boatload of wine, a boat filled with wine. And lo ashkach duchta le'o sobe. He didn't have a place where he could store it. So there was a woman in the community. Amar la lahahi itse. He said to him, Islach duchta le'ogri. Do you have a place to rent to me? I'd love to store my stuff. They didn't have all these little pop-up places like we have on Tui and Kedze where you can store all of your terrifying private stuff in some kind of cabinet. So they didn't have that. So he went over to this woman and said, can I store something on your property? Amar le lo. So then he's like, you know what? Let me take you out to coffee. They decide that they're going to get engaged. Azal and Kidsha, Red Mekudesh asleep. And then all of a sudden, he warmed up to her. And then Yoav Allah duchta la'ila. And then she finally said, okay, fine, you can store your wine here. We're getting married, so it's fine by me. But this guy thought he was going to pull the wool over her eyes. Azal lebese. He goes home and kosav la gita. And he writes her a get. He got what he needed. This is really a one-way relationship here where he just needed to have something stored there. He's a charlatan. And he writes her a get. And Shadar La, he's thinking like, I won. This one I won. And whatever, I'll pay her. I'll pay her for the rental, but we're divorced. She was not having it. She was not having it. Azla Ihi. We'll just wait to see what she did. Azla Ihi, she went. Agra Shkuloi, she hired people who could carry wine, porters. And Agra Shkuloi mine uve. She hired workers from within, meaning she hired workers and paid them with the wine itself. She paid them from the value of that which this jerk of a man did. So let's say she siphoned off a couple of 750 milliliter bottles and said, each of you get a bottle for helping me. And what did she do with the rest of the barrels? She paid them with those bottles, and then the rest of the barrels, Apikte, took them out of her house. But Osve b'shvila, she put it on the curb. Goodbye, shalom. So is this allowed? Was his behavior is for sure not nice, but is what she did allowed? So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Huna Bred Rav Yeshua, Kasher Asa Ken Yaselo Gemulo Yasha Barosha. This guy got what's coming to him, which is honestly really fascinating.
He wasn't over an Isser. he's a jerk.
He's a jerk.
But he wasn't over any Isurim.
He was over no isurim.
I don't think.
I mean, he
I
was.
mean,
it could be
He was
shtickle.
insincere. He was
It's insincere, but is onas tvarim or
Yeah.
it's
I think there was.
That's a
Yeah.
really interesting sheet.
yeah. It's kind of funny actually. That's what the Gemara says, that it's absolutely mutter. And then the Gemara teaches even further. Lomi baya chaser de lo kaimala agra, pasha that she could get it out of her front garden that she doesn't ever rent to anyone. But ela afilu chaser de kaimala agra, even in a place that she normally rents out, and the guy's going to be paying her for it. She's still allowed to kick it to the curb. Why? Amrle, she could say, L'kule al manichali le'ogure. I have no problem renting to 99.9% of the world. But v'lach lo nichali. Why not? The damis alai ki arye arba. You are like an ambushing lion. You're a sneak. I have no desire to do any business with you. So it's unbelievable that you could take that person's product and endanger it. And someone's pasha going to steal it. A goy is there. It's a yain nesech. It's for sure ruined. Pasha, it's ruined. So again, no time. But this would be a fascinating sugya to learn, which is if he's going to be the trickster and try to get her to store, okay, got it, then what is she allowed to do? Fascinating sugya. Last line before the Mishnah toward the bottom of Kuf Aleph Amud Beis. Rashba Gomer shal nachtomen v'shal tzvain shal lashonim. Why is it that when it comes to bakers and when it comes to people who do dyeing, they're dyers, they dye garments, why do they need 3 years of eviction notice? So apparently back in the day, because Tana the Brisa says kifan meruba, they had a very, very long credit system where they would allow money. You can pay me over 3 years. I have that with my orthodontist on my credit card. You don't have that with a lot of people nowadays. Yeah, like even Ledugma, even Apple, when you buy a product from them and you have the Apple card, their credit card, they allow you to pay out over 6 months, maybe 12 months for the iPhone. You buy a car, you make monthly payments, but Lemaisa, you don't usually have such long terms. Again, mortgages, cars, those kinds of things. But your average loan is not really like that. But these people, it's not a loan, but these people would credit
Our mortgage, our straight up loans.
right. So here, this is not. It ends up being a loan in this case. But
Yeah,
ends up being a loan. But you want to buy challah every week. Let's say you want to. I don't know how it worked. I don't know what the case was.
How long do you expect?
How long?
You just need more next week.
I know. Okay, so that's what it says, that it was a kefan meruba. Okay, so now you're renting an apartment. Whose obligation is it to fix X, Y, and or Z? Gerald, you should be, staying awake and helping me out here. That's what the Gemara Mishnah says. Hamaskir buys the chaver if I rent my house to you. Hamaskir, I, the homeowner, chay bedelas benagar uviminam. I'm obligated to make sure that there's a functioning door, that there's a bolt, and that there's a lock. Uvechol davar shemaisa uman. Fascinating parameter. Anything that's a maisa uman, the maskir is chayiv to take care of. So let's just give a practical example. If I own the house, you can't call me to screw in a light bulb. I don't care if you have 2 left thumbs. That's not you're an idiot. Go figure it out. Go watch YouTube. I'm not coming over to change your light bulb. You want to tell me that you have a flood? Say there. I have to get you a plumber. No problem at all. If the action that's needed to be done, and the socher would like the maskir to do it, but lemaisa it's very, very easy, plunging a toilet, normative things. So then hasocher osehu. Interestingly, hazevel shel balabais. Again, we're not used to these things because we don't have an animal culture, but any manure, we're going to be speaking about this today, any manure that is on the property belongs to the balabais. The only thing that the socher has in regards to things that grow vegetation is el hayotzi mina tanur umina kiraim bilvad. Anything that comes out of the oven, that is acceptable for the socher to use, but any animal manure belongs to the balabais. End of Mishnah. So let's see a brisa that's a little bit more detailed than our Mishnah. The Gemara opens up 6 lines from the bottom of the page on Kuf Aleph Amud Beis Tanu Rabbanon. Hamasker bais lechavero, masker chayav lahamid lo delasos, as we saw in our Mishnah, that the owner of the house is obligated to put up appropriate doors, liftach lo cholonos, to make sure that there are windows in the house, lechazek lo tikra, to make sure that the roof is properly strong, lismoch lo kora, and to make sure that the beam of the house is as well safe and good. L'chazik lo tikros, to strengthen the roof, l'smoch lo kora, to make sure the beam of the house is safe. The socher, when it comes to the socher, the renter, chayav lasos lo sula. If he wants to go on the roof, he's the one who has to make, I guess in our case, buy a ladder. And lasos lo ma'akeh, fascinating that the mitzvah doraisa of a makeh has to be done by the socher. Lasos lo marze, and he also, the socher, has to take care of the gutters. Again, maybe it was more normal for them to take care of gutters. Today, we don't know what we're talking about, and they get clogged all the time anyway. Ulahatiach is gago. If the house is leaking, then it's my job to go up there with some pitch, with some tar, with some waterproofing agent to ensure that your house is not leaking. And then the Gemara gets into the sugya of mezuzah. The Gemara says, "Ba'u minei merav sheshes mezuzah almi." Who is obligated to put up a mezuzah? I, the owner, or you, the renter? The Gemara says mezuzah. That's a ridiculous question. After all, ha'amar of misharshia mezuzah chovas hadarhi. Mezuzah is an obligation of the person who lives in the house. You'll hear poskim talk about this Gemara exactly, chovas hadar, that the obligation of a mezuzah is on the person who lives there. So that can't be the question. That can't be what Reb Sheshes was asking, because that's too pashut. Ela makom mezuzah almi. Fascinating. The Gemara says, whose obligation is it to carve into the stone so that the mezuzah can fit there? That's l'chora ma'aseh uman, or is it not? Amar lehu Reb Sheshes tanituha, davar she'ein ma'aseh uman hasocher oseu. If it is something that isn't a ma'aseh uman, then the socher should do it. And hanami lav ma'aseh uman, who putting up of a mezuzah doesn't require a ma'aseh uman. Yes, you could carve out into the stone, you could, but efshar hu beguvta dekanya. You could just take a reed that's circular and you can roll up the clef and stick it in. No problem. We don't need it to be set into the wall. The halachos are that we want to keep it covered. We want the shakai to be facing out. We have some things that we want. It should be on the top third of the door. Machlokas if it's exactly 2/3. But then sometimes if you have a massive door where you can't even reach it because 2/3 is above your head, you got to figure out all these shilas. But the ma'aseh, this is not a ma'aseh umah to put up a mezuzah. And therefore, case is pretty simple that a socher, has chovas hadar, and he's the one who has to put up the mezuzah. Top of Kuf Beis Amud Aleph, heading to the Mishnah at the bottom of Kuf Beis Amud Aleph. Tanu Rabbanan. The rabbis have taught us in a brisa Gemara Pesachim, Hamasker bais lechaveru ala socher lasos lo mezuzah. And then fascinatingly, ukshehu yotze lo yitlena biyado v'yetze. You're not allowed to take down the mezuzah when you leave. You're renting your house to another yid, or you're just giving it back to the owner. You're not allowed to take down the mezuzahs. However, umi nachri, if the house is now going from a yid to a nachri, and there's 10, 15, 20 mezuzahs in the house, notla biyado v'yotze. Then you are allowed to do that.
I mean, the next person who rents is gonna be a guy, or the
It's
owner?
either that you're giving it back to the Jewish owner, or that the next person that's renting is a guy. Then you can take them down. When I move out of my house, when I moved out of my past house, I had to leave all the mezuzahs because I sold to a yid. Had I sold to a goy, how should I take them? They're going to be mavaza then. They're going to throw them in the garbage. It's unacceptable. So it's not a bizayon to take them down when it's for their own protection, but it is a bizayon if
No,
another.
it says that you have the goy take it down and give it to you or something. Well,
Oh, could be. Wow, I didn't know. So we had a Kabbalist in the room. I've never heard that, but I don't know a lot about this stuff. Who said that?
Rabbi Yochanan.
Oh, Rabbi Nathan. Oh, got it. Beautiful. And then the Gemara tells a story, a very scary one. This person broke the rule and he took down mezuzahs and he ended up burying his wife and 2 sons. Says the Gemara, wait 1 second. Ma'aseh listor. That story is a stira to what we just said. We know that there's a time that it's mutter to do. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Sheshes ha-reisha. Absolutely. We're talking about a case where it wasn't to a guy, it was to a yid. And he took it down and then he was kover ishto shnei banam. Very sharp consequence. Okay, let's talk about the halachic status of zevel. Hazevel shel balabais v'nesochel hayotze min atano min akirayim bilba. As we said, if it's my house and you're renting and you find manure in the yard, the manure belongs to me, the balabas. The only thing that you can take from the house is whatever's at the bottom of the tanur, of the oven, and that you can use, or from the kirayim, different types of ovens, that you're allowed to use, but all the zevel from animals, I keep. So says the Gemara, I don't even understand the case. The mayaskinan. What's the case? Ilema b'chatzer da'agir leila socher v'torei de socher. Let's say that you, the socher, are renting my house and you are also renting my animals. Amai shel balabais. Why would the zevel belong to the balabais? If you're renting it, the zevel should be yours. The zevel's valuable. It's very helpful. You don't have to go to the store to buy it. The animal produces zevel all day long. It's easy. Why would it be the balabais if you rented the animal? That doesn't make any sense. Ella, it must be b'chatzer de lo agir lesocher b'torei de maskir. It must be that the field wasn't rented and the animals belong to the maskir, to the owner. And if that's true, then pasha that it belongs to that guy. That's also not a chiddush. So what is the chiddush case? What was our Mishnah teaching us? That the balabas is the owner of the zevel. So the Gemara says, lo tzricha, what's the case? B'chatzer de maskir. Yes, it is the field of the maskir, but v'torei de asume alma kamuba. And there were animals that just walked through the property, defecated, and that was then available. So who owns it? So the Gemara says, because it was the Chatzar de Maskir, it therefore belongs to the Maskir, which is the owner, and it doesn't belong to the Socher. And then the Gemara says, and from this we'll jump into a sugya until the end of the page. This seems to be very similar to the Shita of Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina. Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina says, "Chatzero shel Adam kona lo shelo midaitem." My field, my property, can make acquisitions for me, even if I don't even know about it. So what is this talking about? So it's very simple. I rented you my property. There was an acre of my property that I didn't go to the property because I didn't care to, because I know I rented most of it to you. But acre number 4, you were not allowed to use. So an animal defecated there. Guess who owns it? Not my animal. Animal just walked in from the random. Who owns that? I do. That means that my chatzar is kona for me, even shalom yidaitem. And now the Gemara is going to pose a few questions on this principle of Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina, that chatzar shel adam is kona lo shalom yidaitem. Meisvei, we have a brisa. Im amar kol metzius shiyavo losocho hayom tikna li chatzeri. If I make the comment that any items that are found in my property should hereby be kona them for me, says the Gemara, lo amar klum. That's a 0. So the Gemara says that's very interesting. Why is that a 0? If Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina is right that chatzer shel adam is kona lo b'shalom yidaitem, then why in this case would it not work? V'imisa lahad Rabasi, lahad Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina chatzer shel adam kona lo b'shalom yidaitem, amai lo amar klum. Why would it not work? It should work perfectly. It shouldn't be lo amar klum. It should be that it's kona. Says the Gemara, it must be that we're talking about a field that is not mishtamer, that has no shmira. So says the Gemara, if the field is just an open field and there's no watchman, and we're a third of the way down on Kuf Beis and Aleph, what about the Seifa? Yatzalo shame Metzia be'ir. If people heard a rumor that Karesh found this lost item in his field, so then dvarav kayam. So then everything is good and dandy. Says the Gemara, why is that true? Lo shame mitzia be'ir. Even if people are talking about you, my have. What does that one thing have to do with the other? It doesn't make it a chatzar mishtameres. If it's not a chatzar mishtameres, I shouldn't have any kinyanim. Who cares if people are talking about the property? What does it have to do with anything? So the Gemara says, no, kevan de yatzalo shame mitzia be'ir mivdal bedili inish inshi minei havale ke chatzar mishtameres. A lumdish idea that once people hear a rumor that something belongs to me, they stop eyeing that thing, and then it's kind of like a chatzar mishtameres. Very, very interesting. So says the Gemara. Let's pose a second question to Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina's idea, and let's remember that his idea is that chatzar shel adam is kona lo shalom yidaitem, that my field can do work for me even if I don't know about it. Meisvei, halfway down, the Gemara says zevel hayotzi minat tanor minat kirayim. We said that when it comes to zevel, to some type of whatever is at the bottom of the tanur or the kirayim, or v'hakolet min ha'avir, or if the fecal matter is collected in air. So then, let's say you have a container waiting for the animal to go to the bathroom. You want to nurse, so you catch it in like one of those Home Depot things. Good for you. You caught it. It says the Gemara, harehu shelo. The socher can keep that. We're going to analyze that in a minute. If it was in the barn or if it was in the field, that's shel balabais, that belongs to the owner. But what we do see from here is that the zevel of the tanur and kirayim, and most importantly, kolei min ha'avir, that if the socher collects the manure as it exits the body, but before it lands on the ground, it's his. V'im isa lahad Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina. If you say that Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina is right, that to Amar Chatzer Shaladam Kono Shalamidaito, so then I don't understand. Kolate me avir amai harehu shalo avir chatzerahu. If in fact the socher collects the manure in process as it leaves the animal's body, but before it hits the ground, why would we say hare elu shalo? Why would it be shalo? It shouldn't be. That's not his property. It's avir chatzeruhu. So says the Gemara a couple of answers to this question. Here's answer number 1, 2/3 of the way down, heading to the Mishnah. Amar Abaye b'mad be'kli b'shulei para. There was a kli that was attached to the edges of the animal. They have these things. They're like they're catchers.
Horse and buggy,
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah, so they have these containers that can be machzik gulalim. That's basically what it does. It catches all of the fecal matter, and in that case, says the Gemara, there's no avir. That's what Abaye says. Rava Amar avir she'ein sofa lanuach lav kemunach dami. Even if it isn't totally put up against the body, like Abaye wants to say, let's say that there's a 2-foot separation between the place where the animal goes to the bathroom and the collection of the fecal matter. So the Gemara says that according to Rava, it seems clear to him that if it's ein sofo lanuach, that if it's not ever going to hit the ground, then it doesn't belong to the bialim, it still belongs to the socher.
There's no arrows.
Right. Well, that's what it seems. But then the Gemara questions that right away from our, we know we're familiar.
There's no arrow.
That's what he says. But then the Gemara says, Umi pshita leila Rava. Is Rava really so confident that ein sofo lanuach it's lav kimunach dami? After all, this is something that we saw earlier in this Masechta. The boy Rava Zorak arnaki bepesach zeh v'yotza sami pesach zeh. So I have a very good arm. I throw very hard. I'm standing on the outside of your house, and you have 2 windows that are open. And I take the wallet and I whip it across your house. It goes in one window, through your house, and out the other window. Perfect. Great throw. So says the Gemara, this was a question that Rava said. A moment ago, when it came to the galalim, to the manure, Rava seemed to say, no. As long as it's not going to land on the ground, dvarim pshutim, that if it's not kimunach dami. But over here, he asked it as a question. And what was his chakira mahu? Avir she'ein sofa lanuach kimunach dami. That if something which isn't going to rest, we treat it as though it's rested. Olav kimunach dami. So how can you say that Rava has clarity in our case where you're catching the glalim with a container? Hare, there, elsewhere, we saw that was a machlokes for him, or at least a struggle for him. So it says the Gemara, there's a difference. There's a difference between the case of the arnaki, where it's being thrown in one window and out another, and the other case that we're dealing with, which is catching manure. Hasam lo mifsag below midi. There's nothing stopping the wallet. I'm an excellent arm. I know exactly how to throw. Nothing is going to hit. Nothing is going to hit that wallet. It will come out the other side. But hacha, in our case, mifsak keli. There's something catching the manure. So perhaps, and this is what the Gemara says, Rava doesn't lack clarity when there's a 0% chance that it's going to land in the property. That's not his problem. That's why he said that by the manure, that's the varm pshutim. But when there's nothing to stop it, because it's just catching the thing, but when there's nothing to stop it, so there he's not sure. Problem solved. We had also said in this brisa, that the barn and the field, that they belong to the balabais. And the Gemara wants to know, Tarte, why do I need both of these things? Why do I need both the refes, the barn, and the chatzir? This is the reason why we need to have both a refes and a chatzir referenced in the brisa. Because maybe they're talking about a refes that's within a chatzir, not 2 separate structures, right? You have the chatzir over here in acre 1, and you have the refes in acre. No, they're all on the same exact property. So then that belongs to the balabais. And Omar Ravashi makes a tzushtel from here. Zosameres. Hamaskir chatzeros tam lo hiskir refes sheba. If there's a chatzer that has a refes in it, there's a field, and it has a barn in it, So we therefore do not assume that the refes is included, that the barn is included in the rental unless otherwise noted. The default is that when you rent property number 4 and there's a barn in the middle, the assumption is that the barn is not part of the rental, which is a fascinating rationale. All right, let's go back to questioning Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina. Last of the short lines, I should say. Metzia. Yone shovach, if you see a dove in a chicken coop, in a dove coop, whatever it's called, v'yone aliyah, or an attic where they live. So it's not your animal, but you still should do something as it relates to shiluach hakein. So what do? Chayavos beshiluach. You do need to send away the mother bird. But the asuros begezel mipnei darkei shalom. Sorry. And while I'm obligated to give, I just said I wasn't going to fall asleep during Daf Yomi on Shavuos. I'm like, I keep yawning. I'll have to stand up on Shavuos. So the Gemara says that while on the one hand I'm chayav to do the shlichus, I'm also not allowed to take the eggs. V'asuros begezel mipnei darkei shalom. That's not allowed. You're not allowed to take the eggs because you're in like the middle. You're like kind of stuck in the middle. Let's take a look at Rashi. Rashi a little bit less than halfway down at the 3/5 line. Chayavin b'shiluach hakein im rovetzes al habetzim. That's if the mother is near the eggs. The karina bahen ki kareh. That when the pasuk says ki kareh, that if you happen upon a case scenario, you're pater, but prat lemezuman, the lav mezuman. But that's not true for something that is right there for you. You're not in a random place. You're in your backyard. So therefore, we have this like funny thing. You're like kind of stuck in the middle. So therefore, v'im isa laha the Amar Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina that chatzer shaladim is kona lo shalamidaito. If in fact it's true that it's kona lo shalamidaito, so then kari kan ki kara prat lemezuma. We shouldn't have said that over here because it's in your yard. It's not the case of ki kare in the pasuk where you're in a random place. No, here you should be able to be kona. If the animal makes a nest in your yard and it was someone else's animal, we should have said that that you should do shiluach haken fully and be able to take the eggs. But we don't say that. So it must therefore be that we reject the shita Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina. And the Gemara says not necessarily. There's another case scenario where we don't reject the shita Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina, but we still have this funky dissonance where we're chayiv in the shiluach, but we're not allowed to take the eggs. Amar Rava, what would that case be? Last of the middle with lines, Beitza bi'etzias ruba, when an egg is 51% out of the chicken, hu de'ichai vele b'shiluach. This is so subtle. The mitzvah of shlichus, of shiluach hakein, happens. It is incumbent upon us when 51% of the egg has exited the chicken. However, umikna lo kanya adanafel lechatzeruho. There's nothing like Torah, the splitting of the hairs. But when it comes to the ability to take the eggs, not until you have an actual kinyan. When is that? That's only when it lands in your field. I wonder if there's anything, anywhere in the world that is as nuanced as halacha. It's incredible to say that the shliach is different, that the shlichus of the shiluach hakan is different than the kinyan on the eggs. Unbelievable. And therefore, that's mekame de tipo lechatzero. When we say above in the brisa by the Yone Shovach that you're obligated to do shiluach, but you're usher to take it, that's when it's 51%, but it hasn't fallen to the chatzer yet. So it's middle delivery, mid ovulation for the bird, and therefore you're not allowed to keep it. Yachi says the Gemara, Amai asuras mishum gezel. If what you're saying is that we're in this funny scenario book, but it shouldn't be chayiv in gezel. Like it's in your yard. I understand you didn't take it, and maybe darkei shalom. But like what gezel says the Gemara? What we're really concerned about is iman. We're not talking about the eggs. You just can't take the mother. Pasha, you can't take the mother. That's just regular old geneva. That's not your bird. It says the Gemara, interestingly, there's another possibility. We really are talking about the eggs. And even though it hasn't fallen into the chatzar yet, but once the egg has pushed out the egg 51%, once the chicken has pushed out the egg 51%, daite ilavam, then the people who are there, I'm the bala chatzar. So then once I see that, I'm like, oh, Baruch Hashem, I have an egg for breakfast. Good. I like eggs. And v'hashta da Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rab Aser Liskos Bebeitzim Kolzman Shem Robetzes Aleim. And now that Rab has a unique chiddush in regards to the mitzvah of Shiluach Hakan, that you're not allowed to take the eggs while the mother, that's an isser, not allowed to take the eggs while the mother is there, while she's sitting on top of them. Shnei Amar, it's only first shalach to shalach esa'im, and bahadar es abonim tikach lach, then you can take the eggs. According to this, afilu tema denafal lechatzero. We could even say that the animal fully delivered the egg, and it is there. But the second it fell, the chicken sat on top of it, the mother bird sat on top of it. And kol eicha deihu matzi zachile chatzero zachile. Wherever it's possible for the chatzer to make a kinyan, we allow it. But in this case, it's not possible. Kol eicha deihu lo matzi zachile, because the mother is roosting, is sitting on top of the egg. Chatzero nami lo zachile. So says the Gemara, if there's no zchus, yachi asurs begezlam ibnei darkei shalom, then I don't understand your din. Again, that was the dissonance between, on the one hand, chayavos beshiluach, and at the same time, it's asuros begezlam ibnei darkei shalom. Why are you saying that? Ida shalcha, if the mother was sent away, then gezel me'al yahu, then that should just be regular old theft. And ida lo shalcha haboy shlucha. And if you didn't send the mother bird away, that was your mitzvah to do. So the Gemara concludes, we're talking bekatan de la bar shiluach. We're talking about a katan, a young child who's not bar mitzvah, who can't properly perform the mitzvah of shiluach. Okay, but does a katan have a din of darkei shalom? Katan bar darkei shalom? It's a very subtle thing. That's a good chinuch thing, but it's not an obligation. Children don't have obligations. Adults have obligations. So says the Gemara in conclusion, and we'll stop right here. The father of the katan who did this shlichus that he shouldn't have done, and he took the eggs. If the child took the eggs, it should be given back. Anyways, we solved our problems with Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina, and it's possible that his din is still correct. That chatzer shel adam is konelo shel midaito. But we're going to stop here one way or the other. We need to see Rishonim on this when we have time, which is not right now. Wishing you all a beautiful night.